Hello, my friends, and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. Pete Co. on vacation, no special intro, but I do want to say I love doing this show every day. I've got two great guests every day, almost every day. Today, no exception. Wajahat Ali and Professor Eric Segall both join me. Great conversations, as always, with both these guys who are favorites and regulars. Segall and I, though, don't talk much con law stuff at all, really, because we were talking about his trip. But we were just having a conversation between friends, talking about what he learned on his trip, and I think you'll like it. I think you'll enjoy that and hopefully take something away from it, because I always want you to take something away from this, because I've taken something away each and every day, and so much from those of you listening to the show who give me advice and thoughts and ideas each and every day. So keep it coming. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. I hope to see you at the Hangout tomorrow night, where I guess it's going to be a watch party, because the January 6th hearings are going to be happening in prime time. So I'm planning to watch it with anybody who wants to watch. Maybe we'll get together earlier. Maybe we should get together at 7 tomorrow before the hearing. Maybe I can invite a guest or two. We'll see. But I'll let you know in the email if you are a subscriber and you can hang out. If you aren't, what are you waiting for? Go sign up now. Standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right. No big preamble. Don't have any audio for you. Busy day on Tuesday, but I'm very happy I got to talk with both Eric Segall and Wajahat Ali, who, by the way, co-hosts a podcast with Danielle Moody, and it's great. It's called Democracy-ish, and they're talking to Michigan Senator Mallory McMorrow. So check out that podcast if you haven't already. I think you really like it. And I think you'll love my conversation with Waj, who, of course, is a Daily Beast contributor and has been a contributor to CNN and MSNBC, and one of the smartest people I know. I love him. He's absolutely hilarious. Small interruption with his daughter, who scraped her knee. I always love those real poignant moments. I included most of that because he always lets me. And away we go right now. Go follow him on Twitter if you haven't already, at Wajahat Ali. Let's do it, Waj. I would like to go out on a man date with you, a straight, like we've been talking for so long. Where would we go and what would we do? You don't drink. I don't need a drink. What would we do? Have a coffee? We would have what would our date be? You know what? We can make it somewhat rebellious, because I'm a teetotaler, but I could take you to a shisha joint and we could share a shisha, which would be sexually titillating without the sex. And then also it'd be like a smooth aromatic flavor. We could do blueberry mist. What is it? A pipe? Yeah, hookah pipe. Oh, okay. I would love to do that. I've only walked past hookah pipe joints and stood out on the sidewalk and stared at the brown people. Usually the brown people, Middle Eastern types. Yeah, you're like, what are you doing, Brownie? And they're like, smoking shisha. But you're not a caterpillar. You're like, it's the 21st century. Oh, well, that's so. That would be fun, though. We should actually record a podcast. Yes. While you and I are in an outdoor, like Middle Eastern shisha lounge, smoking a hookah pipe and like drinking lemonade and some Moroccan tea. That would actually be an amazing podcast. I'm looking for something to do while the girls are at camp. I'll come down. You just tell me when, and I will meet you at that place, and we will tape that, and we could tell people to come. And I'll just tell people you're a light-skinned Syrian. Well, I am, Yeah. You could pass. My dad is an olive-skinned Lebanese, and when they came from Lebanon, it was still Syria. So I am actually... look at that. In fact, Lebanese, a quarter of me... I called it. Yeah, that's right. I'm sure I've told you about this, but my grandfather and his brother, my uncle, I would hear them speaking Arabic and stuff. Yeah. No, you did not. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the Syrians and Lebanese who came here it was the first wave of actually Arab immigrants, Arab Christians that came here. And like there's more Arab Christians than Arab Muslims. People use Arab and Muslim synonymously, which is hilarious. But yeah, a lot of that generation was able to come in and they tried their best to integrate and assimilate. And then you're seeing like a lot of folks who will look at you and say, oh, that's a white guy. You're like, actually... No, my heritage is Lebanese, and my grandparents used to speak Arabic. Yeah, there's a huge community of, they call them Chaldeans, the Iraqi Catholics in Michigan, where Val grew up, and it's her best friends. But yeah, they were Christian. They're Catholic. That's how my grandfather was able to marry a Sicilian woman, I guess, because she was Catholic. I guess it was the same God or something, church. I don't know.
And they're like, listen, we got brown, we're both brown folk. We got some olive skinned. The Italians,
it's weird, the Lebanese. It is weird that growing up, we heard Arabic. We knew about, Lebanon a little bit. We certainly knew a little bit about food and stuff, but we never knew anything about Islam. We just assumed, I'm sure, that they were all Christian. We probably just assumed that.
Yeah, but it's like, if you ever go there, it's so fascinating because it's such a mixed society of Sunni, Shia, and Christian. Obviously, there's political and cultural differences that have been exploited, which has been very tragic. But that's so amazing, right? Because oftentimes you're like, oh, that person's white. That person's one of us. And then you go, actually, I'm Arab. Oh, well, you're the good Arabs, I guess.
Yeah, the confusion.
It just shows you how racism is so stupid, right? And oftentimes all these social categories that we create, because I'll look at you and because I was looking at you right now with this proposed Shisha podcast. And I'm like, actually, Pete can pass. Before you told me, I was going to say Lebanese. I said, Pete can pass as a Syrian or Lebanese dude. Yeah. Easy. With a beard also.
Yeah. I'll wear whatever needs to be worn. I'll wear, and by that I mean, kind of a Beirut cologne.
You should have a big Allah pendant in the middle of your chest. Just take out two of those buttons, and I can just be like, "This is my friend." And I'll just give you like an accent, Pete, and he came from Lebanon. He wants to go to the club. You're like, "Hey, assalamu alaikum, Pete."
Then I run out of Arabic, and then they're like, "Say another thing," and I'm like, "No."
No. How are you? Kaif al-hal? Club.
Before we get to all the stuff you've been writing about the beast and talking about in the news and everything, I'm asking everybody for the next couple weeks about summer vacations and best. Are you specifically now? You've got 3 little kids and COVID and everything. Have you, and will you be taking any time off in a kind of traditional vacation setting?
Wife has just informed us that the kiddos, right before they got to go to school, has booked us for a few days in Florida where they're my in-laws. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go, and there was the kids in the background yelling and screaming right before they go swimming. So apparently that'll be our vacation. We'll go see the in-laws in Florida and give pilgrimage to fascist DeSantis, who might be our president in 2024. But yeah, it's something. And my wife is like, listen, the kids are vaccinated. We're still waiting to see whether or not Nuseba, who is our immunosuppressed daughter, has built antibodies. Let's hope it happens. But, it's one of those situations where we want to give them some normalcy. So we're going to go see the family in Florida.
Awesome. There's one now.
Oh, what happened? Oh, give me a second.
Yeah, no.
Oh, you get a scratch? It's okay. It's not bleeding. You're a tough girl. Give me a huggy. No problem. Kissy. So to answer your question, that's how it's happening at our house right now. But she's okay. She'll be fine.
That's amazing. So, well, that's a good vacation, and I'm happy for you. And it hopefully it works out. You're going to Florida, and the time. By the way, let's just get it out of the way. I'm asking everybody this too. DeSantis, Mark Leibovich was on yesterday. He does not think Rick DeSantis can beat Donald Trump. He says if Donald Trump runs, it's his.
Oh, really? Why is he so confident about this?
I don't know, because DeSantis, when you get to know him, he's just not that likable. He's not that good. He's a lot like even his staff. A lot of people. There's a lot of stuff there that makes it hard. He's. I agree with that. I think on a national scale, DeSantis, the alleged charm and the bolstering of the media of DeSantis and doing a wonderful job in Florida, even though he's freaking failed. Look at the deaths during COVID, right? I think his fascist record under scrutiny on a national level is going to make the lights dim on him. I also do believe that he doesn't have the charisma and charm and appeal that unfortunately Donald Trump does have as a media personality. And my hope is, and this is a really strange hope, it's like Aliens versus Predator. No matter who wins, we lose. Trump ain't going out, man. Ego, narcissism to protect himself and shield himself from culpability. He's going to run for president. And that means it's going to be him versus DeSantis and maybe Abbott. I want them to chisel each other up. And maybe that then gives Biden just enough to win nationally in 2024. And then with Biden, I am concerned, Pete. I know Democrats don't like hearing this. I am concerned about his age, just like I'm concerned about Donald Trump's age. Donald Trump's 76, Biden's 79. Donald Trump, his BMI probably isn't a good number. And I think a 76-year-old man drinking Diet Coke and eating steak and hamburgers, probably not the best bet for longevity.
And the fact that you have those two guys running most likely in 2024 should give us some pause. Well, but still vote for Biden.
Well, of course, but I'm concerned about Biden's brand. It's just damaged. It's just with everything that's happened in these 4 years. There's no way for him to kind of, he's got like 1% of young people or something. He's just it's just damaged. It's not. I don't think it's his fault. I'm in a lot of ways. I don't know what he could have done really differently. It's outside the power of the presidency. What's happened with the economy, I think. And
so working backwards, it is outside the power of the president. Oftentimes the president who inherits a good economy, they get the credit. The president like Biden who inherits the shit of Trump gets all the knocks, right? Because the buck stops with those in power. Inflation isn't his, he didn't cause it. Rising gas prices, he didn't cause it. But most folks aren't into the weeds of politics, Pete.
Yeah.
So if you go talk to the average Jose, they're like, I voted for Biden and there's high gas prices. What happened? Yeah. The second thing I think with Biden, and I think it's fair to say, is Biden was the right person to beat Trump. And I think most people realize Biden is not the right person to beat Trumpism. And most of us, if we go back in time, 81 million people voted for Biden, not because we were really excited about Biden. Nobody was excited about Biden because we thought this guy is the right guy to beat Trump, who is a cancer to this nation. That's why 81 million people came out during a pandemic. But is he the right person to lead us forward? My take on it is no, but he has said that he's running. So what I say is if he said he's running, I will take a weekend at Bernie's Biden, January 7th, 2025, barely alive, over a fascist DeSantis or Trump. 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. There's just no other way to see that, obviously. Let me ask you about working our way back with your latest Daily Beast piece, because you and I are talking, this will post Wednesday, and on Democracy-ish, you and Danielle are going to be talking to Mallory McMorrow about what Democrats can do. So give me a preview of that conversation, and people can listen to that. They should be able to listen to that today as well. She's awesome. Glad you're having her on. I've talked to her a couple times. What does she do right that you think needs to be emulated, obviously?
So we're talking about Massachusetts State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who a couple of months, Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who a couple of months ago went viral, and her video went viral because she actually responded to one of these bad faith, really hateful Republican attacks, calling her a pedophile, right? Because for those of you who don't know, that's the QAnon conspiracy theory that anyone who's not them is part of a liberal international sex trafficking cabal run by the Jews, and we're trying to kidnap, kill, and rape children. So she, unlike other Democrats, actually responded in front of a camera for 4 minutes. Yeah. She responded passionately, and unlike other Democrats, she messaged. She was proactive and said, I'm a white Christian mom. Yep. And as a white Christian mom who's a Democrat, I don't think I need to, I don't reflect my values in hate. I think I can reflect my values through love, and I don't need to denigrate LGBTQ kids, right? And so as a result of those 4.5 minute clip, she skyrocketed. She got an amazing fundraising haul. She got like a huge boost on social media. She became a national player. And then even James Carville came out from his crypt and said, he said, that Mallory McMorrow, I think she's on to something, calling them freaks and weirdos. I think that's what we got to do from now on. I think we got to fire back and call them weirdos and freaks. I think there's something there. And so, so McMorrow is one of those Democrats, I think, like Fetterman and Newsom, AOC and Warren, who's reflecting a type of passion and fight that the base wants to see. And I want to ask her, A, what inspired her to do it? Yeah. B, how do you, like you mentioned that those really troubling poll numbers for Biden, how do you match the enthusiasm gap? How do you fill it in? Yeah. How do you win over the young folks? How can Democrats message better? And what is the message for those who are disillusioned that the Democratic Party will fight for them? I want to press her on that a little bit. And the last thing I want to ask her, if we have the time, is she's one of those folks who really wasn't your standard politician. She kind of fell into it, but she's doing a really good job. Yeah. And so for like those average Joes and Jose's and Janes who are like, what can I do? Like, I want her to, like, hopefully they could look at her story and be like, yo, like, I didn't think I'd have this platform 2 years ago. Now look at me.
gonna be great. I can't wait to hear her on with both you guys. Listen to Democracy-ish with Waj and Danielle. And let me ask you about your latest piece at the Daily Beast. We're not prepared for what MAGA brown shirts will do in 2024. And you relate a lot to the last January 6th hearing where you heard from the two insurrectionists who one of them hugged, the Capitol police officers after. And a lot of people thought that was a nice moment. Do you agree that was a nice moment? Because some people were like, fuck that guy anyway.
It was a nice moment in the sense that, you and I have discussed this on your show, where I think we're both radical when it comes to forgiveness and rehabilitation.
Yes.
People make mistakes. And I think it shows more of the mercy and the generosity and the grace of the Capitol Hill police officer. The freaking name, I'm forgetting his name, the person who gave the testimony. What was so funny, he goes, he's still not completely de-radicalized if you were listening to him. He's like not completely like, he's just like, he's on the fence still about whether or not the election was like won fairly. I don't know if you guys caught that. It was like very unsettled.
I've started doing my own research. It doesn't seem to be stolen.
And like, now it's like anytime when someone says, I did my own research, like red flag.
Yeah.
So it is one of those situations that I think it's important where a person who is not the devil or a demon, right? Most people aren't. In fact, no one is, right? You could see how a person can be radicalized by right-wing disinformation. He said it. He goes, I looked at the social media sites, the right-wing sites. This is what they told me. I believed it. I did my own research. I dug deeper. I went down the rabbit hole of disinformation. And I thought, honestly, that, it was stolen. And then I went there and Donald Trump was the guy. And then I followed him. He said, march. I thought he was going to march with us. And so you can see how a person gets radicalized and becomes part of a violent mob. That process, I think, was interesting. And the fact that later on he gave that person the hug is like, I was wrong. And the fact that the Capitol police officer forgave him, this is the part that pisses people off, Pete. Why are the victims always asked to be welcoming and kind and forgiving to their abusers? And the reality is that it's usually those who are marginalized and oppressed who oftentimes have to be the better person, the bigger person. And usually we're the communities who fight for a country that doesn't fight for us. It's how it is. It's the way of the prophets.
Yes, well said. Who are the brown shirts? What are they planning for 2024?
Right, so I wrote this article for the Daily Beast, and I'm glad they let me write it. Brown shirts were the militia, a violent force that helped Hitler and the Nazi Party rise to power and maintain power by terrorizing and intimidating anyone who was not part of the protocol, right? And I call it the MAGA brown shirts are here to stay. And what we're witnessing right now, and we have to witness, is the radicalization and weaponization of the GOP. A third of Republicans who were polled by PRRI, a great group run by Robbie George. I think you've had him on your show before.
Yeah, he was just on, yeah.
Yeah, a third of them say that they believe in using violence to take back their country.
Great.
A third.
Great.
Yep. Awesome. And then you saw the January 6th violent insurrection. And yes, they were armed, contrary to the BS Republican talking points. You see the heroes who are elevated. Kyle Rittenhouse, right. Mark McCloskey, who took out his gun against peaceful BLM protesters. Eddie Gallagher. You're seeing the concealed carry laws in
SEAL,
Texas.
Eddie Gallagher, the guy who's convicted of
the Navy SEAL freak, like the war criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And so literally what that narrative is, this is our country. We have a right to stand our ground. We're going to take it back by any means necessary. You see the Patriot Front friggin' Nazis marching in Boston. You see Oath Keepers and Patriot Boy, the Proud Boys, now part and parcel of the Republican Party. So what is, just step back. What is this? This is a GOP paramilitary force, militia groups, individuals who believe that Trump and the GOP has their back and wants them to stand up and take back their country. And we've already seen with the people that I've mentioned that they're willing to use violence. Ashley Babbitt, radicalized, came there for violence. She's not a martyr. She was a violent insurrectionist. She came there for violence. So now imagine the 2024 election. Suppose Biden wins. A majority of Republicans right now believe in the big lie. A majority believe in the replacement theory. A majority of them think that we're pedophiles. What do you think they will do if they think that we have stolen this country from them? What do you think they're going to do, Pete?
I think they're going to continue to go down the same road that they've been going down and continue to be radicalized and hopefully I mean, they'll probably continue to get organized as well. I mean, I don't know specifically where it leads, but I think they will continue to be radicalized and organized and certainly armed.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be flashes of violence. I think there's going to be crises upon crises, constitutional crises, especially at the local levels where we already know. Heidi Presbilla, who was with NBC, wrote this piece for Politico last month, which I always try to keep re-upping, is that the GOP is completely aligned around a precinct strategy. And specifically, they're using their quote army of GOP activists to disrupt upcoming local officials. This includes GOP activists, district attorneys, election officials, right? So if suppose they lose, they're going to say, voter fraud, big lie, they took it from us. They're going to galvanize their local militias and local nuts like McCloskey's and Kyle Rittenhouse. And those guys are going to come and literally kill us. What do you think is going to happen to democracy? That's what I want people to realize, is that this is now a weaponized force that is so deep into this conspiratorial ecosystem that they think you and me are not just taking their country away from them, that we have the mark of the beast, right, and are literally coming for their children to rape them, eat them, and kill them. It's
hard to motivate your side when they've got that as their motivation. Like, you think that taking away women's reproductive rights, taking away other rights. Taking away rights is not murdering your children. It's horrible to lose your rights, but at least your children aren't being murdered.
Or eaten,
they're mined for their adrenochrome. I mean, organizing and getting people to be motivated on Earth One is hard, because people that live on Earth One they don't believe that the other side is sending some kind of robotic bird to snatch their children and molest them. And it's one of those things we've talked about on your show before as parents, is if you think your neighbor is going to kidnap, rape, kill, and eat your child, it doesn't matter how educated you are, how rational you are going to defend your child with violence if necessary. I mean, let's take it back to Pizzagate. We should just give up and look at our crazy neighbors' children and just lick our chops a little bit. Like, hey, how are you?
It's like, have you ever had baby with Chianti? They're like, what? Like, I didn't say baby, I meant arugula. That's what I said. They're like, what? You should just go all in. He goes, I have an adventurous palate. I had a grilled octopus, and tomorrow I'm having baby feet. They're like, what? Nothing. Just walk away.
Baby feet. All I'm saying is it depends on what percentage of people fall down. It's hard for me to believe that so many people that they're going to throw the elections that way, because it's going to be Republicans in charge. It's hard to do that. I just witnessed this local election here, and I don't know. I feel like at least at this point, there's still responsible people in most towns and cities that are in charge of the elections. And I know that Bannon and everybody's trying to change that actively, which is what we have to fight tooth and nail at every town council, at every board of education,
there you go,
and everything else. You have to do that. I got involved, and it's, if you don't, then you're just a bystander and you're watching them take over. But
that's exactly it. They're banking on us watching them take over, and they're banking on us to cede the ground once we are violently intimidated by them. And we've mentioned this on your show, but it's worth reminding folks that the school boards is a great example. And you have a personal story there where they took over school board after school board. And finally, when the majority steps up and confronts them, they lose. But the majority is met with such a fierce resistance, intimidation, harassment, threats, that really just, damage the psyche. Like, think about it. No one wants this shit during a pandemic and climate change and income inequality. Oh, by the way, I got like these hateful phone calls and posters against me and people calling me terrible names. So what happens? The rational folks, the majority, cede the ground. They tap out. They say, it's not worth it. I don't care. I'm done. And that's exactly part of the strategy for the brown shirts to come in and take over. And the brown shirts are the minority, but this is how they win. It's like a virus. Local council after council after council after medical board after school board, state legislatures where they have the majority. They have 60% of the state legislatures. And another article that I wrote, which is part and parcel of this strategy, is this one I wrote about this upcoming Supreme Court case called Moore v. Harper, which is the
so
case
glad that you wrote about this. I talked to David Daly a lot. Yeah.
Oh, you talked to Ellie about it. That's great.
Daly, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No,
so
David Daly writes, who writes all
about David. Oh, yeah. David's great. Yeah, this case, for those of you who don't know, is a case where the Supreme Court, the fact they even agreed to hear it should terrify you. But essentially, the Republicans are supercharging this BS thing called independent state legislature theory, which allows the state legislatures to bypass everyone, governors, courts, elected officials, and pretty much take full control over the elections. And the reason why they should terrify you is Republicans have the majority of state legislatures. They run the state legislatures in the battleground states, the one that Biden won. And if the Supreme Court says, they can do this, this means the full implementation of the coup can come to fruition, where in 2024, literally, they could be like, fraud, we don't buy it. We're going to reject the slate of electors that represent the people, and we're going to put our slate of electors, who magically will be Republicans, who give the state to Trump and DeSantis. Right. That's the end, guys. That's it. That's a wrap.
So pay close attention to what happens with that case, obviously. Read that article and get involved locally. Pay attention. And that's hard to do when you don't know what's happening locally because there's no local journalism. I've been thinking a lot about starting a local media outlet, which other small, which other towns could model and profit from. I wonder if you can have a local podcast or YouTube show that you could raise revenue with local advertisers, restaurants, etc. Doing, that's what I'm thinking about, and working with someone who has a lot of different views than me, because otherwise people don't know what's going on in their town.
Actually, that's a really good idea, because one of the prongs of the Republican strategy to dismantle democracy is to completely eradicate local newspapers and investigative journalists, and they've been very successful. Just look at the plummeting numbers of local newspapers, just shutting down their offices, right? Yeah. And then disinformation via social media, and then also literally eliminating public schools, like Betsy DeVos, who used to be our Secretary of Education, just said that she doesn't believe in the Department of Education. And she's a woman who said that public schools are a dead end, as she was the Secretary of Education, even though public schools educate 90% of our kids. So they want to get rid of public schools. They want to get rid of libraries. They want to get rid of all of these institutions in which inform a citizenry and literally help a citizenry so they can maintain power and control. And I think if anyone takes the lead to create a super local community-led podcast initiative drive, first and foremost, you literally reap the benefits of it because you live in that community. But then you also keep that community informed, and then that community can then run for office. And then, it could be like Fight Club. We can set these up all across the nation.
Really? No.
And I joke, but that's what Republicans did. That's what Republicans did in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking a lot about it, so we'll talk about it another time. I thank you, as always, buddy, for joining me. It's great to see you. It's been way too long, and I hope to talk to you really soon.
I hope to talk to you as well. Sorry that my baby came in here with a scraped knee and yelled and screamed for 5 minutes, but she's doing okay now, and all is well.
No worries at all, buddy. Keep us updated.
All right, man. Later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, there he goes. Wajahat Ali. Go follow him on Twitter. Tell him you always enjoy him when he joins me here on Stand Up. I hope that you got a lot out of that and take something from it, as always. And now it's time to get to my second conversation on today's episode with the professional constitutional law scholar. I really meant to say professor, and I said professional. He is a professor at Georgia State University, of course. Go check out his podcast, Supreme Myths, both of his books, one of which just sold out on Amazon because it was getting so much attention from the New York Times and Jamel Bowie in particular. And so we started our conversation talking about that, but then we mostly, it was about, 7 minutes or so. And then we got into his vacation, his trip. We had some laughs. We always have some fun digressions, and hopefully you enjoy the ride here with Professor Segall and I. If you do, go ping him on Twitter at eSpinSegall right now. All right, Eric Segall is joining me. He is back from his 32nd vacation of the year. I mean, that includes the last 12 months. I'm not just saying 12 within the last 12 months. And a lot is happening like you go on, nothing better than going on vacation. And I don't know that you feel this way, that you feel a little guilt that you're not working or that you're missing out on something.
No, I don't feel that way.
I want to talk about that. But the point is, while you were gone, the New York Times' Jamel Bowie discovered your work and started promoting the hell out of it. And your book sold out on Amazon. And just real quick, how big of a deal is that to you? What the hell happened?
Well, I don't know. So this is okay. So I had asked you not to discuss this, and you're discussing it anyway, so we'll discuss it.
Well, we all root for you, and we think this is great when your views get recognized and respected as they deserve to be.
Lynn and I had a 3-day kayaking trip with no internet service at all, which, by the way, was great, and we should talk about that. But leaving that aside for the moment, I got out of the kayaking trip. We have a 5-hour drive to our next destination. So we stopped, and I still have no internet. We're in the middle of, we're at the ends of the earth in Vancouver Island, Canada, north of everything, and just that's another. We'll get into that. But so we finally get into internet range. I'm driving. I don't look at my phone. We go to dinner. Lynn goes, to the restroom, and I look at my phone, and I have a note from a very well-respected historian, law professor at Boston College, who, by the way, the originalists hate because she does history correct and thinks they all do it wrong, and she's right and all that. But anyway, congratulations. You must feel really good about all this. I had no idea what she was talking about. So what I learned the next 2 minutes was that this New York Times op-ed person who I really like and I sometimes read had done a column on books I've been reading this weekend or this week. And it was four or five books, but he led off with my 2 books on Supreme Myths, why the Supreme Court's not a court, and Originalist Faith. And it was really nice of him to plug both books in the same column. And he's on Twitter, he's been kind of like this morning, he retweeted my Dorf piece today. We'll talk about. I'm just very flattered, and he's a really smart guy. And it's, I'm not going to lie. It's nice when your work is recognized. And amazingly, for the next week, this actually took me for a loop. Originalism, as I've told you, the people listening to you before, when I wrote Supreme Myths, it was my first book, and I had no control over the price. 0. So it's been priced at an absurdly high level forever. I can't change it. It's contractual. It makes me really mad. Lynn wants me to write Supreme Myths too to counteract that. We'll talk. Maybe I'll do that. But the second book, I had control. I was a different person, different career. I had negotiating power. So Cambridge let me negotiate the price a little bit, and I said no more than a certain amount. And it's been hovering. It started at 25 for the paper, but it's been hovering at 15 for most of the last 4 years. The week after his op-ed, his editorial appeared, it was A, sold out, and B, was selling for like 30. They tripled the price, which I don't like. I'm not defending that. I don't like that. But they tripled the price of the book, which goes to show what Amazon does, but also is suggestive of how influential the New York Times is. Because the publisher cannot triple the price of the book. I have a contract with the publisher, but Amazon can do whatever it wants. And they tripled the price for like 2 weeks. I haven't checked. I know, isn't that crazy?
That's wow. Well, I guess it's something.
I didn't know it was the thing either. Lynn said, because Lynn teaches in the business school, my wife at Emory, it's just supply and demand.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but it doesn't
That's
seem.
what she said. I know, it seems unfair.
Doesn't seem fair. Well, you've been saying so much of what you've been saying and writing for such a long time, and I guess, in a way, I think you'd probably admit that you wish you weren't right about so much of it.
I wish I was wrong about all of it. I wish we had a court that was a court. I wish we had a court that didn't lie to us about the motivations for their decisions.
But people did not give you the type of respect in academia and legal scholarship world that you deserve. They didn't take you that seriously. They thought you were a radical, a crank.
So I guess if the arc of my, do you think people are interested in this? Because I don't know if they are, but this is the arc of my career. From my academic career. Because I was a lawyer before that for the Department of Justice, a big law firm. I clerked for judges. But the arc of my academic career was from 1991 to 2012. I was a typical con law professor who wrote law review articles, really long ones, no one ever reads, once a year, did occasional radio and stuff, not much. Then you came into my life, Dahlia Lithwick came into my life, and my arc changed dramatically. And now I started doing your radio show, which led me to Steele and Unger's radio show, which led me to, I'm forgetting his name now, he'll kill me, but I was doing all kinds of radio, a lot of TV, and all that stuff. But now it was like a social media thing. My book, Supreme Myths, accepted by all or most smart non-law law professors, including lawyers, was rejected by law professors. They thought I was crazy. Of course, they would say, of course, values play a role in the Supreme Court, maybe a large role, but it's still a court. And I was like, no, it's not a court. And perfect storm of events, as I've talked to you before, shows it's not a court. Nobody in academia accepted that. But partly because of you and others, I developed this media presence that wasn't terrible for a Georgia State law professor. And then around the time of Kavanaugh, give or take, so around 2000, whatever, 19, whatever that was, around the time Trump got his second pick, and then certainly by the time Barrett got foisted upon us, now the thesis that the court is not a court is being taken very seriously by academics. Now, I think that's mostly for the wrong reasons. I think it's liberals and progressives who are so mad at the court that this theory is appealing to them. And when they say that, I respond, it's never been a court. It wasn't a court in 1871, 1857, 1900. It's just never been a court. Judges don't do what these justices have done for 200 years. But among academics who I care deeply about, my thesis is now much more widely accepted. And part of that is that the New York Times, and part of it was, and about 3 years ago in the Washington Post, one of the most famous political scientists in the world, who has written a lot about the Supreme Court, had a big 5-page spread in the Washington Post. Everybody respects this guy. He's an academic who's been around a long time. And he started the Washington Post thing by saying some scholars like Professor Eric Segall don't think the court is even a court. So when scholars of that statue, whether they agree or not, take it seriously, then things change. And I would be less than honest if I didn't say my life has changed dramatically, both because of your launching me onto a social media career, and now academia has somewhat caught up with my 2012 book.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea that you could share your views in social media with a more layman's audience, some regular folks, or my radio and podcast audience, now your podcast audience, although your podcast audience probably mostly, people are already pretty interested in legal scholarship, although they might have come there through
Actually,
us.
I have a surprising number of lay people who write me about it.
Great.
Truly surprising.
That's great.
Surprises me tremendously.
I just don't know how people find things. My podcast, much less yours, but I guess maybe it's easy if they look up legal and con law.
It's such a flooded market. Who knows?
So anyway, the point is, I think social media is, especially your views, such as they are, get seen by a wider audience, and people have a different sensibility and background, and they could see it as it actually is, as it always has been.
I thank you, Pete. I really tried to write Supreme Myths for the well-informed lay person, which I think I did, because you read it. You're a well-informed lay person. You're not a lawyer, and you clearly understood it. And we talked about guns. We talked about abortion. We talked about economic. We've talked about the book back in the early days. My goal was to write a book for not law. I knew law professors were rejected. That wasn't an issue. I knew law professors were rejected, but I was trying to reach a smart, sophisticated lay audience. The price of the book made that difficult. But over time, with my Salon articles and Slate articles and New York Times op-eds and blah, 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 I've reached, I think, the audience that I want to reach. And now I'm at a crossroads because I can't decide. I enjoy talking to smart lay people much more than law professors.
Oh, yeah.
Not close. Yeah, it's not close. But my work is now being taken very seriously. I don't have that many years left, and I'm trying to decide.
What do you mean you don't have that many years left? You're going to stop. You're never going to.
Well, I'm 64. I'm 64.
Yeah.
I think I have one last. I have one last book in me. I know that. But 5 to 10 years from now, Pete, I really hope not to be talking about the Supreme Court.
Oh, really? Well, then let's pivot then to your vacation. You had reached out to me and said, "Hey, we should tape a conversation about my getaway." And that's about...
Well, what I said, that's not what I said. Okay. What I said was, if you think anyone at all would care about it and we could make it funny and entertaining, we should do it. But I'm not sure we can do that. I'm not sure we can.
I am. Trust me. So, I mean, let's talk about it, because I think that, it is... Well,
so let me tell people where I went. And there are some, and by the way, there are some serious things here, points I want to make about America. And there's some funny stories I think you might like, or I think might be funny stories. Lynn and I had been invited to a very hotsy-totsy conference, not a lawyer conference, a conference of people across the spectrum of I don't know, success. Geophysicists, scientists, economists, some lawyers. It's called Renaissance Weekend. I can't talk much about it. It's not supposed to, but basically it started with Bill Clinton's ambassador to London in the 90s. The Clintons used to show up all the time. And it's a place where you go to talk about ideas. You'd love it. It's like Aspen Ideas, that kind of thing. Except it's a little bit more, I don't know, social than that, maybe. I made the wrong word, but there were 400 people. We've been invited to that now for 3 years in Banff, Canada. I've always wanted to go to
Some
Banff.
kind of legal orgy? Is that what you guys do?
It's not legal. It's just not a legal thing. Like 5% of the people there were lawyers, maybe less. No. It involved scientists, astronauts, politicians, inventors.
All right,
really
a whole bunch
cool
of smarty
stuff.
pants orgy.
Yes. We were invited We were invited in 2020, canceled because of COVID. 2021, canceled because of COVID. This year, finally, it wasn't canceled. And it was in Banff, Canada. I've always wanted to go. I was born in Montreal, moved to New York when I was 4. I've never been west of Toronto in Canada, and I really wanted to go to the Canadian Rockies. So was Lynn. So we finally got to go. And all I can tell you is, if you're listening to this and you have the resources and time, go to the fucking Canadian Rockies. They're unbelievable. I mean, it's the most beautiful winter.
Have you been to a mountainous area? Have you been to Rockies before?
Yeah, of course. I've been to Colorado. I've been to Utah. Sure. I've skied. Yeah. Pete, I've skied 4 times in my life.
Oh, that's it.
So that's it. So I'm not a skier. I'd like to be a skier, but the 4 times I went, I liked. But I went to Squaw Valley. I went to Breckenridge, and I've been to Utah twice. Anyway, those places are like anthills compared to the Canadian Rockies. This, as far as I can tell. And then this was our plan: arrive in Calgary a day early, see Calgary, drive to Banff, which is 2 hours. The conference is 4 days. Got to Banff a day early, climbed a mountain. We almost got killed by an elk. This is a true story. So here's the first story. Lynn and I are climbing Tunnel Mountain in Banff, Canada, something I recommend everybody do. Not a hard climb, 2 hours or so, but uphill. Coming down from the mountain, and my wife loves animals of all kinds. The main purpose of this whole trip was a whale watching trip at the end, which I'll tell you about in a second. But we're climbing down Tunnel Mountain. We get back to the civilized part, like we're right near town in Banff, and there's an elk standing in the middle of the road. Now, we had been told that, in fact, in this part of the world, elks are more dangerous than bears if you get them mad. I can't stand by that proposition. That's what we were told. So
I know. Okay, go ahead.
So
because
maybe I'm not Mr. Nature guy. Like maybe I'm not the guy to ask those questions to. But anyway, that's what we were told. So I see this elk and we can't pass. Like the elk's on the path. Like we're not going anywhere. And it's huge and it's eating. And it looks at us.
Just the one?
There was only one.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's by himself, or she's by himself. It's a she, obviously, because there were no antlers. It's a she. And now, so in my world, I back away. I enjoy it. I wait till she moves, and I go down the hill. Like that's what a normal human person does, right? My wife is not a normal human person when it comes to animals. So Lynn had to edge closer and closer to this elk. This was not a good situation. Turned out there were 2 other people who came down the hill who saw this too. We shushed them. They came around the corner. They saw the elk. They shushed. And the elk's not moving. Like we can't get past the elk. And Lynn is not doing what a normal human being should do by backing up. Lynn is like trying to get a good picture. Maybe wants to talk to the elk. I don't know. Lynn loves animals. So I'm not exaggerating this number. This was at least 20 to 25 minutes of being unable to pass this elk.
Wow.
And what we didn't know is we didn't think there was a fawn near, I think it's the right word, a baby elk nearby.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But we were told if there was, that's when they get really bad.
Called elks.
If they think that if they think you are threatening their young, they kill you. Basically.
Yeah, that's most of nature.
Yes. So
I mean, is there any living thing that's ever like, you know what? Come on in and kill my spawn. Come on in.
That's a fair question.
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
my hamster ate its babies. Now you got me thinking. Okay, so you're stuck there with.
Wait a minute. Hold on. That's minor digression. Okay, so your hamster This is your hamster hate your babies. I can top that. Yes, wow. I can top that.
Go ahead.
Lynn is now into the fostering of guinea pigs,
right?
As you know. Yeah. So we have 17 guinea pigs in our house.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wow.
Wow.
And this is
a problem.
And a few weeks ago, you just said a hamster ate their baby. And I admit that's bad. This might be worse. You know what guinea pig male babies do?
What?
They rape their mothers.
No. No.
They have sex with their mothers. They do. Yes. So somewhere along the line.
When? At what point?
Like 3 weeks.
After about 3 weeks old,
yes.
They start having sex with.
According to my wife, I guess everything on today's show, except for what I said about my books and what we're going to say about Justice Thomas at the end, is hearsay stuff that I am just repeating. But Lynn tells me that male guinea pigs have to be separated from their mothers at 3 weeks or they will have sex with them.
Oh, boy.
So that's a whole different show. But anyway.
All right, you're back. We have to. I want to interview Lynn about these guinea pigs. All right, let's get back to the elk.
No, the elk. Just one last. So finally, Lynn is getting too close to the elk. And I'm like, back the fuck up. Your audience won't understand this joke, but I think you will. I sound like Richard Pryor. Like that's what Richard Pryor would have said. I just watched a special on Richard Pryor. What a genius. Just back the fuck up. And she's not doing that. And then the elk does this thing with its mouth that was very disgusting and very threatening. Now, it turns out we learned later it was not a threatening move, but we did not know that at the time. Finally, Lynn backs up because the elk was like did a horse neighing thing at her, but in a much more threatening way. So finally, so we just waited. We couldn't go anywhere. Eventually, the elk went into the woods and we went down the path. My Segall on nature. Anyway, Banff is a great place. I strongly suggest that everybody goes. And I want to say one word about this conference, and this is quasi-serious. And I don't mean this in a self-deprecating way. I mean this in a real way. So if there are 400 people at this conference, 300 to 400, maybe 20% are academics. So 80% are not. And Pete, these are people who've done things. I was on a panel with an astronaut. Right. I was on a panel with a geophysicist. There's this horrible scandal in Canada that has not made it to America. I don't know why it's not made it. Canada's been pretty good with the indigenous people, but there's this school scandal where it was awful and the little kids got really hurt. And so this biophysicist is trying to dig up graves of 50 years ago to find these missing kids and all that stuff. People who invented things, people who started foundations and charities. I felt very small. I felt like what have I done? I've done shit. I mean, really? And I'm not saying that. No, yeah, honestly, certainly, we both felt that way. Because these people do things. Like I don't do things. I write about things. I don't do things.
You're a professor. You're a teacher. I mean, you're saying teachers don't do things. It's a weird.
High school and middle school and elementary school teachers do God's work. Do amazing things. Me, I just complain about the Supreme Court and every now and then, But I mean, Pete, it's very hard to be proud of yourself when you're sitting next to people like an astronaut or a biologist from Brown University who in the early 80s was the key witness in a case that helped to beat back. Remember creation science? This alternative to evolution?
Yeah.
He was the star witness.
Intelligent design.
That used to be called creation science.
Oh.
He is a biologist who testified in real court about how stupid that was, how it wasn't science. Doing things, like making a difference in the fucking world.
Once at Aspen Ideas, I was hanging out all night with a former commander of, I think, 3 or 4 shuttle missions. I never felt inadequate. As a matter of fact, he said to me, I could never do what you do, stand-up comedy. And I was like, yeah. And then I said to him, I was like, I could fly the shuttle.
Well, I do respect stand-up comedy. That's a different conversation, but I respect that a lot.
I was with the commander of the shuttle, and I was like, "We're on the same level."
Right. I felt very small. So,
wow.
We leave. So we go to this conference in Banff. We leave Banff. Our ultimate destination is Whistler, but on the way we stop at this town called Kamloops, and we stayed in an Airbnb. And that was Lynn's idea. I didn't want to do it. I'm a hotel kind of guy. She's an Airbnb kind of gal. So we stayed in an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere in this very small town. It was beautiful. And here's the thing about Canada, Pete, and it was true from the second we arrived in Calgary, when we couldn't figure out the stupid renting of the scooters to go through the park. From that moment on to the day we left Canada, everybody's helpful, everybody's friendly, everybody is kind, and everybody is very concerned about America and what the fuck is going on in this country.
Tell me some of the types of conversations you had or questions you got asked by Canadians.
Well, it's almost always guns.
It's almost guns.
Almost always, not always, but it's almost always.
One of my best friends, David Campbell in Australia, his wife is coming to the U.S. for a visit, and he's like really worried that there's going to be gun violence, and it's. I think that's irrational to think about visiting a place. I'm not to the point where I'm not going to amusement parks or shopping malls or whatever. But I also...
It wasn't about that. It wasn't about visiting.
Oh.
It was about how can you live in a country like this?
Right.
How can you have newspaper headlines that kids die like once a month by guns?
Right.
Just, but there's also...
Yeah.
My answer is you're right and I have nothing to say. It's insane. That's my answer. It is. There's no Pete, and I have a very, very close friend who lived in Brussels for a long time, and we had a lot of talks about Europeans. There's no explaining this to other civilized countries.
I would give it a shot.
Go ahead.
I'd say it's a mix of like our culture and background and history, and as well, but really it's the influence of media making people think that their rights are being taken away and that they need these guns to protect themselves and their families. And I mean, like it's a mix of things.
And they would say to you, as they said to us, they would say to you, okay, why would any civilian ever be allowed to have an AR, a gun that can do that much damage? I mean, so handguns in the home for self-defense, we can have a discussion. Guns for hunting, where you limit it to the hunting, we can have a discussion. But how do you have kids walking around with AR-15s? What kind of country does that?
I think it's the kind where it's never enough. Like it's never enough. This idea of you can never tell me what I can have or do or be. Right. This is America. And as you've always argued, like all rights have restrictions, all of them.
Everyone. There's no exception.
That's how I would explain it. There are people that believe that they have absolute.
Well, I don't think they would. So, right. And I've done that, you and I have discussed this now for however many years.
Sure.
That's not what they were looking for. I mean, I'm talking about 2 or 3 conversations, not 50, but I think the view is you can detail to me the reasons why this exists, but it just shouldn't exist. And I have no argument for that. We should not have a country of 400 million guns. Let's move on. I just couldn't. It's wrong. It's bad. It's terrible. And we shouldn't have it. And anyway, so that was part of it. But mostly they were just helpful. And they were helpful in a way you didn't even have to ask a lot of the time. Like it's just amazing thing. So this woman in Kamloops who owned this Airbnb was wonderful. She had like this outdoor kitchen and it was on a river and it was beautiful. And by the way, we were there in Canada for 18 days and the temperature never went above 80. Ever.
Above what? Fact, sorry, you dropped.
Actually, the highest temperature we had was like 75 degrees.
And you like that?
And that was only a couple. Well, when it's 95 degrees in Atlanta and 90% humidity, it doesn't suck.
Right.
It doesn't suck. So we go to Whistler, there's nothing interesting to say other than it's a beautiful place that's very upscale that we loved. And we went to Whistler for a reason, because after we were going to Whistler and stayed in a very nice, fancy hotel, I was embarking upon a 3-day kayaking trip, which Lynn wanted to do, and which I also wanted to do. Would I have chosen this myself? Maybe, maybe not. There's a funny story coming from the kayaking trip, which is, so we're camping out, by the way, in a tent, but we're camping out.
Wow. Now, I saw you in a tent on a cot, and I said, is Segall camping?
Under the stars, my friend. Under the stars.
Are you when was the last time? This is a weird.
I can tell you exactly.
Kayaking trip, camping does not sound like you.
Can I detail to you the total sum experience of my camping in my life?
Yeah.
When I went to sleepaway camp at 13, we had an overnight in some field somewhere, and I had that. Where, by the way, I made out with my girlfriend, who was on my podcast 40 years later, but different conversation. That's true. Nina Sadowski.
I know. We've heard that story.
So that's one camping experience. I didn't camp out again. That was 1971. I did not camp out again until my dad turned 70 23 years ago. And for his 70th birthday, he wanted to go to the Grand Canyon and do the rapids. He was too old to, actually row the rapids, but we're on this thing called a J-rig. That was 23 years ago. My dad's 93. I camped out 2 nights then and this week. So that's my 3 camping experiences in my life.
3 times in your life that you've gone camping.
Yes. Because you know what, Pete?
You're above it.
I don't like camping. I like nothing about it. There's nothing about camping.
You look so cute, all snuggled up in your cot. I was like, who's that little boy? Who's that little boy? The second
night, the first night was uneventful. The second night, we get into the tent, we zip it up, we start unpacking our stuff, and there's like 7 mosquitoes. Okay. These are really the first bugs we've seen, by the way, which was confusing to me in July.
You hit it at the right time, maybe. Yeah.
I think so. There's like 7 mosquitoes, and they're loud, and it's going to be annoying. And Lynn has to go do something. So I said, I'm going to try to kill as many of these mosquitoes as I can. She sarcastically said, good luck with that. She leaves her tent. And I'm unpacking.
And you start the hunt.
Well, not yet. I'm still unpacking, but they're too much of a pain. And then a mosquito comes up by my head, and then so I look around for the first thing I could find, and Lynn wanted me to kill the mosquitoes. Is that clear? Like, Lynn was happy with me. Lynn likes animals, but not mosquitoes. So I grabbed the first thing I could find. We're in a tent, Pete. I have clothes and a tent. That's all I have. Clothes and a tent. So I find the first thing I could find to kill the mosquito. This may have been a mistake. It was Lynn's hairbrush.
Mm-hmm.
So I pick up the hairbrush and I kill 3 freaking mosquitoes in about 10 minutes. I thought that was pretty good. Now, I didn't use the bristles. I used the hard part of the... But it may be that some mosquito blood, or whatever they do, mosquito ooze, may have rubbed off on Lynn's hairbrush. She comes back into the tent an hour later, and I'm like, I killed like half the mosquitoes. She was like, Eric, that's great. What? How? With your hands? I said, no. I had hid the brush in the meantime. And she said, what'd you kill them with? Eventually, I confessed that I killed them with her hairbrush.
Wow.
And that wasn't a great moment in our marriage. We've had better marriage moments than that.
That was a lot of what were you thinking?
I was thinking I had to kill the fucking mosquitoes before she got back.
What did you? Anyway, how do you do on trips like that? Do you not think about the world?
So, well, it was really easy not to think about the world for the 3 days we were on the water and under the stars without any internet access at all.
Yeah.
And I recommend that to everybody.
Yeah,
if your personal life allows it. Our kids are at camp. The camp had my sister-in-law's phone number in case something went wrong. She knew she had the phone number of the company that we used, which in emergencies, the guides had walkie-talkies. The guides were amazing. But they, so of course, my dad's 93 and not in great health. So my brother knew where I was in case something happened.
Right.
But other than that, I was disconnected completely, 100%.
Beautiful.
And boy, was that good. Boy, was that good. Now, at the beginning of the trip, going back to the conference, this is kind of a funny story. They had assigned, everyone who goes to this conference gets assigned things. And I was assigned 2 or 3 little panels of like 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. But I was also assigned a plenary lecture on originalism for the last day. I think they thought that would be relevant for this year, especially. They planned this, the week before this. I mean, they planned this before the Supreme Court end term, but they knew a lot of stuff was coming. We show up we sign up for the conference 4:00 Thursday. My big lecture is Sunday. I find out at 4:30 Thursday that they've changed everything, and I am no longer lecturing on Sunday about originalism. I am lecturing the next morning at 10 o'clock. This is 4:30, day before. Big cornerstone lecture thing to most of the people, a lot of the people. And the title of my talk is, they hadn't cleared this with me. The title of my talk was The Supreme Court Today in 45 minutes, of which 20 were supposed to be questions. So that was interesting.
That's easy for you.
These are really smart people. And it's supposed to be nonpartisan. This is a nonpartisan conference.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So I crowdsourced that on Twitter, actually. And I got a great idea from someone. And whoever out there who said this, thank you. I don't remember who it was. I used the line I got from Twitter, Pete. My presentation began as follows. Thanks for having me. I'm very flattered to be here, especially given this role in my first time at this conference. My job is to tell you about the Supreme Court today in a nonpartisan way. Here is my promise. I will be as nonpartisan as the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's good stuff.
That is
anyway, good
so going
stuff.
back to Canada. So we do this 3-day kayaking trip. We're totally in nature. There's 6 people with 2 guides. Gosh, these guides were great. They were just great people. Like they had just values, and you'd love them. Of course, everything was green. I mean, everything was about the environment. We couldn't even get near the animals we wanted to see too close because they have rules about that. You can't get within so many kilometers. I was talking kilometers the whole time. I don't even know what kilometer is today, but whatever it is, it was kilometers and meters. And it was great. And I have to say, the camping part I could take or leave, but the being on the water, the kayaking, the seeing the wildlife, we saw these great seals, 11 bald eagles. We saw bald eagles everywhere.
Wow.
And they're amazing birds. They sit on the top of these really tiny trees, and they're just amazing. The other 4, so there were 6 people and 2 guides. 2 women from Germany, they were fine. And this couple from Austria who were young, very good looking, very athletic. And they were great. And they had a great sense of humor. They could make fun of themselves. They made fun of us, talked a lot about America and how insane everything is. My favorite thing was the guy was 6'3", 6'4", he told me. He was 6'4", obviously in shape, strong. His girlfriend, obviously in shape too, is 5'7", 5'8". And the entire trip, Lynn and I noticed that she was doing all the rowing. Like he was in back, there's 2 people kayaks, but these are the Rolls Royce of kayaks, great kayaks, but she was doing all the rowing, which we thought was funny because he was like big and strong. Anyway, and the very last night, we ended up playing a card game Lynn wanted to play. And at some point during that, and then we had to say what was like our favorite thing about the trip as a group to the guides. And the 6'4" Austrian said, my favorite thing about the trip was just floating and watching. And his girlfriend went, yeah, I noticed that. And Lynn and I have been talking about this the whole trip. So I said, yeah, we noticed that too. What the fuck were you doing? It's pretty funny. Of course, Lynn did almost all the rowing for us. That's a different conversation.
Is that right?
I had health reasons. My shoulders are shot, as you know.
I was going to ask you how your body held up.
My body did not hold up great because the first night in the tent, we were putting stuff away. I reached up to grab something and I tore my rotator cuff. How do I know this? Because I've had 3 torn rotator cuffs in my life because of my vast tennis experience, and I tore it. The good thing about tearing it is I haven't gone to a doctor yet, but I'm 99% sure it's torn. And I screamed out in excruciating pain, and Lynn was like, oh my God, what happened? And then 5 minutes later, when you tear your rotator cuff, it doesn't really hurt because it hurts if you lift your arm up, but it doesn't hurt that much because you tore it. You know? So that made rowing difficult. Lynn, who, is kind of superwoman in many ways, she insisted I did row the rest of the trip the best I could, but she clearly took up the slack and was mad at me every time I tried to row because she knew I was hurt. But she's strong enough to do a 2-person.
She's the greatest.
Yeah. But it was amazing. And the night times were amazing. And it was just great.
Did you make any discoveries? Did you write in a journal? I
didn't write in a journal, but what I discovered. So before we got there, the reason I brought up the whole thing about the con law thing at the conference was I had to be plugged in then because I was doing my job. I was there for my job. I mean, my school, in other words, I was giving 4 con law talks in 4 days, including this plenary lecture. So I was checking the internet and doing Twitter and all that stuff because I was doing my job. Once we left that conference, Lynn and I agreed we weren't going to do any work, and we didn't. But, you would check and put one eye on it. Without a working phone for 3 days is incredibly liberating. It's just incredibly liberating. It is. It is. I mean, I highly recommend it for everybody.
So what you learned, the main thing was disconnecting. Is there any way to describe what it does to your mind, your soul, your body, your
and remember, this
span?
So the kayaking trip, I think, was like July 12th. We're only 3 weeks out from the most historic and worst Supreme Court term, maybe. One of them, one of the top 5 worst terms in history. So it had been pretty stressful for me. And then having to talk about that in a nonpartisan way was a struggle. So I was highly stressed. When I say highly stressed, it's relative. I have no stress compared to most people.
Right.
But to forget about that, I did not think about the Supreme Court really for 3 days. And that felt great. I mean, that was liberating in many, many ways.
Yeah. Whatever it might be for a person when they didn't think about blank for a couple hours, much less a few days. A lot of people, are just trying to find ways to do that, exactly, to escape. So I'm so happy that you were able to do it, because it certainly has been a very tough month of June.
Yes. I want to talk about Vancouver. I'd never been to Vancouver. People had told me about Vancouver.
Yeah. I've
always thought that if I ever have enough means to retire someplace nice, it would be in a beach someplace or in the south, a lake house maybe, or I love the water. I grew up on Long Island. I love the ocean. I love the beach. Jen and I are both now thinking we'll retire to Vancouver. What an amazing fucking place.
The thing about Vancouver is it may be one of the most beautiful places on earth. That was certainly my experience. And I was there in April, but apparently, the rain is relentless half the year.
Well, it's like Seattle. The winters are like, it's the same climate as Seattle, basically.
Right.
So it's no different than Seattle. In fact, it might be a touch. I mean, it's basically Seattle. Sort of basic. It's only 2 hours from Seattle. So it's basically, but that's not the reason. First of all these places, and I had been to Toronto. I had the same reaction there. But all of these places, Banff, Vancouver, Calgary, which is a fairly big city, it's probably the size of, Nashville or something like that. Well, maybe not Nashville, but it's a reasonable sized city, are spotless. They are spotless. And they are civil, and there's just a different feel. But nowhere is that more true than Vancouver. So our last night in Vancouver, we were only there for 2 nights. People told us, go to this beach called English Harbor and watch the sunset. And I like sunsets, as you know. I post pictures of them relentlessly. So, and because I'm at the beach once in a while, I go. Okay, I want to do a full disclosure right now. Okay, I'll get to Vancouver in a second. It is true that a week from Thursday, I am heading to a beach.
Jesus.
But it's a work thing. It's a 5-day.
Well, I mean, you take time, beautiful places. It certainly looks like you're on vacation, but you do about every third week. It would seem
not every third week. I just don't want you to give me shit when I post.
I just want to know your and Lynn vacation days schedule. Like, what kind of a gig gives you so much? Anyway, so you're in Vancouver. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm in Vancouver, and so we first of all we were told. We asked everybody we could find, what should we do in Vancouver, especially because we only had 2 days, so it's a big city. So, and everybody said the same thing. Like, what you do in New York, you get 27 different answers. Here we got the same answers. First, you have to go to Stanley Park, which we did, which is an amazing park that you just ride. We rode bikes.
It's the most beautiful park I've ever been to. And
Me too.
Me too. Same designer as Central Park. It's like you're on 3 different planets.
Yes, and we rode bikes all around it. It's amazing. So we did that. And, but what everybody kept saying was it's a foodie town.
Fruity?
And gosh, foodie, Foodie.
Oh, I thought you said fruity.
No, foodie. And it's an amazing, so we ate well because it's a great place to eat. I mean, and the nice restaurants there are expensive, but they're not New York, Chicago, Boston, San Francisco expensive.
Really? I think Vancouver is one of the most expensive cities in the world, at least to live, the real estate.
I was told this is one of the 15 most expensive cities, but all I can tell you is the upper end restaurants are much cheaper than New York, Boston, Chicago.
All right. Well, you would know.
And then maybe you should be a stand-up. Have you ever thought about that? It could be
just saying.
By the way, speaking of stand-up, I'm going to get to my point about Vancouver, I promise. I want to say something else. Lynn and I, when we got home, the kids are still at camp. They're going to be at camp 2 more weeks. We watched Dave Chappelle. So you and I once had a conversation where I said to you, my favorite comedians were Richard. I mean, obviously all comedians have ups and downs, but I think Richard Pryor is incredibly funny. I thought Robin Williams was incredibly funny. The usual suspects. And you said to me, this is 10 years ago, you thought Dave Chappelle was the best of them all.
Well, my personal, he was, yeah, but saying someone's the best comedian is a silly thing. But, he's my favorite. He's my personal favorite. Yeah.
That's a very Judge Posner thing you just did, by the way.
Oh, is that right? I thought we were going to make it through the interview without a mention.
No, that's a very Judge Posner's thing about con law was it's about preferences. Yeah. When you say Roe versus Wade is right or wrong, what you really are saying is I like Roe versus Wade, or I don't like Roe versus Wade. So when you say he's the best comedian, what you really mean is the one you like the most. I tell my students, is Godfather 1 better than Godfather 2 is the wrong question. The right question is, which do you like more? Anyway, sorry. Very Posnerian of you. In any event, my students love that question, by the way. In any event, so we watched this Dave Chappelle his most recent special, where he goes back to his school. They were going to name a building after him. I won't.
Yeah. I haven't seen it.
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was genius.
I'll go watch it.
Genius from beginning to end.
Anyway. Didn't they now change it again because he's been so transphobic?
Just watch the special.
I'm
not going to ruin it. Just watch it. Anyway, okay. So here's what I want to say about Vancouver, and it's the most important thing. So we go. So I'm thinking, it's going to be like 8 o'clock, and the sun sets at 9:45. That part of Canada, like the sun at 9. I mean, really late sunsets. You're really far north and west, I guess. So anyway, so it sets like at 9:30. So we get there at 8:15, and Pete, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people lining these beaches watching the sunset.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like. I've seen that in America at 5 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I've never seen it at dusk. I mean, just so many people, so much diversity, every kind of diversity you can imagine, just right there in the open. They technically don't allow alcohol on the beach. Now, what they told us, we talked to a lot of people, and that was the other thing. Just talking to people was great.
Yeah.
And everybody was friendly. They told us, well, you have a beer or two, no one's going to bother you. If you start getting rowdy because of alcohol, the police will come and they'll say leave. It was so gentle. That's the best. I'm trying to think of the right word. I mean, there's pot everywhere.
Who gets crazy at a sunset, though? I mean,
in America, go to Fort Lauderdale at sunset.
Is that right?
So this is what happened. So although it's full of people, which is something I don't like. I don't go to touristy places. I prefer the kayaking with the whales. It's just different. It's just different. There's a different vibe to it. The best word I can think of is gentle, peaceful, calm. Even though there's thousands of people there. So finally we find our place. There's these rocks that are right on the ocean, and we sit on the rocks to watch the sunset. Have a beautiful view. And in front of us are 4 20-year-olds. And that's it. There's us and then 4 20-year-olds in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And as the sun went after the sunset, we stayed for a few minutes. As the sun was going down, Lynn got an amazing picture of their shadows against the sunset. Like, from behind, all you can't see, because the way the light was, all you see are 4 silhouettes. Really well defined. So Lynn says, there's one woman and 3 guys. And Lynn says to the woman, she climbs like 3 more rocks to get there, endangering life and limb. And she says to the woman, hi, you guys. I don't know if you care, but I've taken some pictures, I hope you don't mind, of your backs, and I think they're pretty good. Do you want them? Are you guys friends? And the woman said, yeah, we're all 4 of us friends. And she said, that is so nice of you. And then showed her the picture. And she was like, we definitely want this picture. We're from different places and we're friends. And,
sure.
And then a guy turns around and says, he's like 24, 25. And says, well, these 3 folks actually are from Canada. I'm from Wisconsin. This would never happen in America. Thank you so much. It's a direct quote. It's a direct quote.
That could happen in America. I've seen that kind of thing happen. You know why? Maybe. I'll tell you why.
Like tell me why.
Because Lynn's American, and it's a Lynn thing, not a Canadian thing. It is. She's a wonderful person who.
I don't know if Lynn. Yes, but I don't know if she would have felt. I don't know. There was just. So can I give you some Stephen Sondheim trivia?
Oh, God.
Like 6 people in your audience will appreciate this. So I'm talking to 6 people out of like 10,000 people who listen to this. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum was one of Sondheim's first shows. And the famous song, which you know about from that show, is Comedy Tonight. something familiar, something peculiar. That song. That song opens the show, but it wasn't supposed to. The first song that he wrote to open the show was called "Love Is in the Air," and they basically said that wasn't good enough for the show, so he wrote "Comedy Tonight." Pete, love was in the air in this atmosphere. It's different.
Okay, I see. I can see that. I can see that, and I concede it. And yes. I think that is. But I do. I don't want to.
And you know how I know this?
I'm not ready to say that is dead in our.
I'm not saying it's dead.
I think in communities across the country, you can find that, and I will hang my hat on that idea.
No,
maybe
I'm
not the one I live in.
I'm not. Yeah, really. Or the one I live in. I'm not saying it's dead in America. I'm just saying. Yeah. Lynn and I felt this jointly without trying to convince the other person.
Again, there's something about a sunset that I think.
No, it was all Canada. It was wherever we were in Canada. It was wherever we were. We were on hikes. Now maybe it's nature. I mean, some of that. You love nature. Maybe it's nature. Maybe nature brings that out.
What kind of a thing is that to say? I was actually thinking about talking about that with you. I'm like, I wonder, because I went on a little hike this morning, and I was like, knew I was going to talk to you, and I was like, I wonder how much of the nature he appreciated and how much it affected him.
Lot.
And then you would say something like that, like, you love nature, Pete. Like, who doesn't? Like, don't we all? Doesn't it have that effect on all of us?
No.
All right. Well, it should. God damn it.
I agree that it should. I will say the most spiritual, because I'm not a person of faith. I'm agnostic, but the most spiritual moment of my life was in the bottom of the Grand Canyon of my dad, looking up and thinking, I'm tiny, I'm teeny, I'm nothing, I'm an insect. I'll come and go, and no one will care. And this place has been here for thousands of years, and will be here for hopefully thousands more years. The scale of the Grand Canyon, that's a different trip. But the scale of the Grand Canyon, that's the last time actually I loved nature. 23 years ago. I went 23 years without loving nature. No, I love beaches too.
Where in the spiritual nature experiences does the guinea pig having sex with his mother rank? Would you put that anywhere? Because that must have been really
low. Sometimes nature sucks, especially for the mother.
That's nature too, my friend. Nature is dangerous. It can be most dangerous.
We really should have planned this around me taking a picture of the guinea pig setup that Lynn has in this house right now.
Well, let's work that in.
We'll save that. We'll save that for the time.
Yeah.
I want to say that we left Vancouver just feeling, I don't know, different. And then we go to Seattle, which is a beautiful city. Seattle is a beautiful American city. Mount Rainier is right there, and it's the biggest mountain I've ever seen from a distance. It's like huge. And it has the water. It's got very old parts of Seattle that have a lot of character. And I'm not impugning the people of Seattle here. I'm not. But I want to say that the second we crossed into Seattle, I have a funny story about the train before I get there. Pete, it's different. The feeling, it's the same geography. It's 2 hours away, not far away, and it's the same geography. And Seattle's a lovely city, and the people are lovely, but it's not the same. It's dirtier, it's grimier, and the people are always in a rush. No one in Canada is in a ruch.
Right.
No one's rushing.
That's true of a lot of European countries as well.
And me, I'm always in a fucking rush, and then takes me to task correctly sometimes for that. Canada slowed me down, Pete, which is interesting. All right, so here's another thing that happened when we planned this trip 2 years ago. This is a COVID story. When we planned this trip 2 years ago, Lynn did some. I'm the travel agent in the family. I love travel. It's what I do. There are three things I know about: law, the NBA, and travel. And I do a lot of research on travel. But on this part of it, I thought we would just drive from Vancouver to Seattle. But Lynn read there was this great train from Vancouver to Seattle with beautiful scenery. And we both love trains in Europe, not in America because they suck. But in Europe, we love trains. And we thought maybe this would be that kind of train and it would be pretty. So when we booked this 2 years ago, we booked the train, but then COVID came in and everything got canceled. So this year, and the conference was June, in February or March, when it became clear it was going to go on despite COVID, we booked the whole trip, and it was a lot of planning. It was Calgary to Banff to Whistler to kayaking to Vancouver to Seattle. Lynn said, I really want to take that train. I said, all right. So I went on Amtrak and I booked a train from Vancouver to Seattle. And that's the last thing we knew. We arrive at the Vancouver. Now we rented a car all through Canada, but because we were taking the train from Vancouver to Seattle, we returned the car in Vancouver. Pete, we had to pack for 18 days, including work clothes. So we had 3 black suitcases that are like, roll along, and the biggest gray suitcase that any human being has ever seen. It took both of us to lift it, and Lynn's really strong. So we arrive at the train station with these 4 suitcases plus a backpack plus 2 other bags, ready for our train from Vancouver to Seattle. We get to the window, and something seems to be wrong. Like there's no train. I'm looking for train 504, and it's not there. Nothing's happening. And we say to the guy, "Where's the train to Seattle?" "I have an e-ticket." It says Vancouver, Seattle. And he says, "There is no train from Vancouver to Seattle."
What?
And the people behind me are like, "What do you mean there's no train? We have the same tickets." Well, it turns out that Amtrak discontinued that during COVID. The people behind us did book something on Amtrak from Vancouver to Seattle, but it was a bus. By the way, this well-dressed, affluent-looking person was not happy that he was taking a bus, not a train. What I did, in my infinite travel expertise, was I booked a train from Vancouver, Washington to Seattle.
Oh.
I didn't even fucking know there was a Vancouver, Washington.
Oh.
Who knows there's a Vancouver, Washington?
Dear.
So
and
now,
how does your wife react to that?
Well, we're both puzzled at first, but then Lynn, with no judgment, and frankly, since I've known Lynn, I have probably, this might not come as a big surprise to you, I have probably made, I'm not exaggerating here, 5,000 travel decisions over the years, because you've mentioned occasionally we travel, So this is like my first big mistake. That isn't the problem. The problem is we have to get to fucking Seattle because Lynn has a number of good friends in Seattle we want to see and are looking forward to seeing. And we have to get to Seattle somehow. So
you hired a jet.
No, we did not hire a fucking jet, you asshole.
Chopper.
We in Victoria, Canada, we did see seaplanes all the time.
Oh yeah,
and I said,
yep, they have
not for me. Yeah,
and landed in Vancouver there too.
Yeah, not doing it. It's right. Vancouver is. Yeah, Pete, you're very knowledgeable about the Vancouver area.
I've been there once for 2 days. Go ahead.
Okay, so we say to the bus driver, "We're really stupid Americans, and we really screwed up. Can we get on this bus to Seattle?" Now, I hate buses, and I did not want to get in the bus. And this was like, whenever you think of Greyhound, this was like Greyhound -6. Like it was.
That usually means chickens, poultry on the actual bus.
Pretty much
roaming around.
Pretty much. He says, "Well, stand to the side." We had to wait, and which was fair because we had no tickets for the bus. Meanwhile, the well-dressed person who thought he was taking the train was complaining about the bus in a gentle way, but was very upset that you had to go on this stupid, terrible bus. We do get on the bus and go 3.5 hours to Seattle. That did work out. It almost didn't. Really, who's heard of Vancouver, Washington? If you're out there, I'm sure you're a lovely place. Change your fucking name. It's too deceiving, and there shouldn't be an Amtrak now. And then to add insult to injury, we learn that Amtrak is reinstating the Vancouver, Canada to Seattle.
Oh, yeah, just in time for you to
September 1st.
Oh, good. Well, there you go,
yeah, that
folks.
Very well. I want to say that Lynn was in no way judgmental of this mistake.
That's impressive. Good.
Yeah, I want to say one other thing. We were gone. I just have to say this. I'm sorry, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way. Lynn and I were together for 18 days in a row, no kids. Now, 4 of those days, we're at a conference talking to other people and stuff. And then we had a couple of dinners with people in Seattle. But overall, we were by ourselves for for a long period of time. Married 15 years. I just got to tell my wife I love her because at no moment in time were we tired of each other.
Oh, wow. That is so wonderful, and I'm so happy to hear that, and it's very heartwarming. I love your marriage.
True.
She's a wonderful.
We don't have a perfect marriage, but I think we have one of the best, I got to say.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That ain't easy, as you know. So thank you very much for joining me. This is wonderful, and I loved it.
I want to say I hope people were not bored by this travel log, but I will say get your butts to Calgary, Banff, and Vancouver, and Jasper, and all those places.
And put away those phones for a while.
Put away those phones. It was it was great.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, my pleasure.
All right, well, there you go. That's today's show. I hope you liked it. I love Wajahat Ali. I love Eric Segall. They are both close personal friends of mine who care deeply about me and I about them, of course. So I like to think it always makes for great conversations and such smart guys that when you're in conversation with them, you just feel privileged to be talking to them because you never know what you're going to learn, what's going to happen. And I just adore both those guys and all of you. So thank you for listening. Subscribe now. StandUpWithPete.com, Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. John Carroll, take us out with our song you wrote for us. And everybody go buy the song at johncarroll.org right now and support John.
Trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think your driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, to make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.